Hi, Robert. Welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
Hey James, it's great to be here.
Yeah, likewise. Really excited for this conversation because one of the things that sets your work apart is how you help leaders uncover, the deeper patterns shaping how they lead and grow. Um, for founders listening, why is understanding their own story and how they show up as a leader often the key to unlocking their next level of business growth?
So one of the things that we notice is that if we don't understand who we are, we don't understand where we're coming from, we don't have the pin in the map to help us think about the journey of where we're going. So it's a bit like, if you're doing your sat nav and you put in where you want to get to, it says, well, where are you now? So one of the things that we do a lot of thinking around is, so who are you right now? Where are you right now? So that we can understand your journey, we can understand your history, your patterns, your beliefs that support you, but also the beliefs that hold you back. And by understanding who you are, as you start to move forward, you can do that in alignment. So it's a little bit like when we understand what our values are, we can make values-based decisions. So one of the things that we spend a lot of time doing is just getting to know people, understand who they are, how they tick, how they show up in the world, and is it how they want to show up as well? Because sometimes what we notice is that sometimes we're showing up in a should way. We're showing up because somebody's told us this is the way to do business. So we're doing it via a playbook that we've read somewhere or somebody's told us somewhere, and it isn't really how we want to operate. So let's work out, how do you want to operate? What is it that you stand for? And then we can work out, so how do we move that forward in a way that's healthy for you, your business, and your organization?
Yeah, really interesting. How do you because that makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm totally open to the idea of you've got that internal, dialogue, you've got the values, your beliefs internally, and that is how you kind of show up to the world and
Mm.
your outer world reflects back from your inner consciousness. So I'm quite open to that. Do you find a lot of leaders are open to having that conversation, or do you have to lead them down a path? How do you kind of navigate that?
So I think most leaders recognize that um, once they understand that there are these things called values or principles, or even, when we think about a mission statement, if we take business language and go, okay, so you talk about your business in this way, this is also how you show. So once we start to link those two things together, then people find it really easy to go, oh, okay, yeah, I get that. I understand where you're coming from. One of the things that's really interesting is that when leaders choose to work with us, they know that there's going to be some interesting things happening. They know that it's not just going to be the usual, let's sit down and do some coaching. There's going to be other stuff at play as well. And we're going to, unpick a little bit of your journey. We're going to get to some stuff that isn't as comfortable as you'd like it to be. And when we build that relationship, so one of the key things that happens with any work that we do is we set out to build a deep relationship with somebody so that they can feel safe with us, to trust us, to take them on that journey.
Yeah, really fascinating. And so you kind of mentioned one of the things that, or the things that leaders might, when they come to you, almost be or understand that things are going to work a little bit differently than, conventional coaching. And I guess one of the things is, if people kind of understand your backstory, which you talk about, you come from the performing arts background, so you've got that, quite unique perspective, artistic flair, and that comes across in your sort of communication and your energy. You can kind of see how, that comes across. What with that unique journey, and then to lead in a fast growing leadership coaching company, how did that background shape your approach to business and coaching?
So I think one of the biggest parts of it is the story. So, training as an actor, we're really interested in what's the story that's being told here. and we're interested in who's the character that is showing up and what's the character's needs and wants, which is really similar to coaching. As an individual, we have a goal, or as an organization, we have a goal, which is like the character's objectives that they're trying to get met in any given situation. So there are some real similarities that cross over there. And so I'm really curious about what's the story that's at play here? What's the story that's unfolding? And how can we take ownership of that story and author it ourselves? So that sort of creative background around authoring and creating comes into the coaching space around, okay, so what is it that we want to create here? What is it that we want to do? And then what are all the different ways that we might go about this? What are all the different characteristics that we might bring to the table that enable that to happen? My journey from sort of theatre to coaching, it wasn't a straight line. It was a kind of, beautiful wiggly worm. And I did some work with a mentor of mine, Matilda Gilbert, and we were both working in schools at the time. And I was very much the creative practitioner at that point, and she was much more the education specialist. And we would have conversations about the work that we did and sort of the links between it. And she talked a lot about coaching and leadership development. And that's what kind of segued me into this world, wanting to understand how she worked and how she was able to hold a room so well when she was facilitating. So I was like, what are all these things that you do that I don't quite understand yet? And how can I take those into my skill set? At the time, it was just to become a better workshop leader. But what I noticed was by developing those coaching skills when you're working with, at the time it was young people, you were asking them different questions. And then schools got interested in that. And I sort of went from working with young people doing creative work to doing coaching work to then working with their teachers to then working with the whole school system, which then moved me into working with coaches, looking at how do you work with young people with coaching, because it's not the same. That led me into working in an organization and then just kind of grew from there in my coaching journey.
Hmm. Yeah, really cool timeline, and I can see how that, that's sort of progressed now. It makes sense given that context. What was some experience that helped you prepare for the challenges of leadership coaching, in that journey?
I think the biggest challenge was leading a leadership team through COVID. So um, when COVID came, I was working at a coaching school, Anima Center for Coaching, and we had trainers all over Europe ready to deliver the training. And we had to make some really tough decisions about, well, so what do we do with them? How do we get them back? Because, borders were closing at that point. And then it's like, how do we continue the training? And we shifted from an in-person to an online model overnight, and working with a team to make that happen, facing all those challenges, getting people from across Europe back home safely. That sort of challenge really gears you up for what are the pressures of a leader? Because in that moment, it's all on you. Everybody's looking to you to enable uh, the transition to happen, and to happen well, and to happen safely. I remember, sat there with different monitors and different cables, trying to work out how are we going to use Zoom to demonstrate stuff. How are we going to use the whiteboard? Does Zoom even have a whiteboard? Because at that time, you just used it for conversations. So all of a sudden, you're in this huge learning curve. And I think that's one of the other things that really enables you to be a great leader, is always being on the learning curve, always looking to grow, to learn, to develop, whether it's something that's really specific to your business or something that sits outside of your business that just keeps you in that growth mindset.
Yeah, yeah. It's always an interesting time as well, that, during that COVID pandemic, because it's just new waters for everybody
Mm,
navigating, there's no handbook, there's no playbook, for
no,
how to navigate. And especially as a leader, that's, you face all the pressures of, yeah, we're in new waters, and how do we even, we're just literally just, yeah, leading on the front line of absolutely new and a new environment and new
Yeah.
circumstances. So yeah, interesting that you mentioned that. What was sorry, go on.
I was gonna say the thing before that as well that I think that sets me up to work with leaders is having failed in leadership. So I was part of a team, and we weren't doing as well as the founder wanted us to do as a team, and we had to listen to the failings of our system and wrestle with, so how do we do this better? How do we learn from this? And how do we do this better? How do we all take our own part of responsibility for what's not working? And that was a really tough time. You know, there were some people who left because they felt uh, that it was unjust, or they felt picked on, or they felt that it wasn't their doing, it was somebody else's, and they were being unfairly punished within the system of it. And there were people that grew through that. And I remember it being a time of having to, you know, look the people in the eye that you're working with and going, so we've messed up. How do we recover from this? And we did recover, and I think we recovered really well. And like I think a lot of leaders will say to you is, you know, those are the moments where you truly grow. When things are going wrong, when you're failing, you really learn about yourself and you learn about your teams. I think it's one of the things that I bring to the work that I do is that recognition of, I know what it's like when things are going wrong. I know what it's like when the founders are knocking on the door going, what are you doing? Why is this happening? And the bottom line, you can see the numbers going down instead of up. And you have to turn that ship around. And what it takes to do that, the tenacity that it takes, the bravery that it takes to enable you to make that happen. And the team that you have to have around you, which is why part of the work that we do is looking at systems. What's the system that's at play here? Because that's the thing that's going to support you when things get difficult. And that's the bit you're going to celebrate with when things go well.
Mm. Yeah, interesting. And when you say systems, are you talking about internal systems as a leader? Are you talking about like the business systems? What kind of how does that look?
Yeah. So I'm talking about the processes and the people.
Hmm.
I think both things need to be interconnected and working well. If you have the right people around you, you're going to have the right support, but you need the right systems in place to make that happen. So one of the things that the Zenith is facing right now is that as we grow, is what are the systems that we need in place to manage that growth? You know, when there's just two of you going out and doing the work, you just need a phone and a laptop. But as you grow, then you need, right, where are we sharing information? Where are we storing information? How are we connecting? Who's the designer on this program? Who's going to be delivering this program if it's not us? And then what are the systems that you need in place that enable all of that to happen in a smooth way? Because when you have the right systems in place, you reduce the stress. When you reduce the stress, then you open up the mind to doing all that creative thinking.
Mm, yeah, very cool. Yeah, let's talk more about Zenith Leadership then, because you know it's quite a new company. You know, been going for 18 months, something like
Yeah,
that, maybe.
yeah.
Yeah, and obviously you're operating in a pretty competitive space. You know, when people talk about coaching, I'm sure you might find like you don't want to be put in that box of, you know, just every other coach. So how do you navigate that differentiation when you're opening conversations and having that, you know, that conversation?
Well, I think there's a couple of things here around this. One is recognizing who you are. So, you know, we talk about what are the values of the leaders and the organizations that we work with, recognizing what are our values as an organization, what's important to us. One of the big things for us is about that, the idea of vulnerability. You know, how do you stay vulnerable in this workplace? How do you share you don't know all the answers, so you need the support of your teams to make something work? So we bring a lot of that into the space, and we're also both Enneagram practitioners. And the Enneagram is fairly new in the UK. It's huge in the States and in South Africa, and a little bit in Europe. And so we bring that model and that way of working to our clients. Now, some of our clients, they will do Enneagram profiles, we'll do the questionnaire with them, we'll do reports with them, and they'll get a real deep sense of who they are, what motivates them. And what's the beauty of the Enneagram is it isn't just a this is who you are. That's it. It's all about growth. It's all about development. It's all about expansion. So it says this is where you are right now, and these are your pathway to growth. So it's something that's really tangible and really usable. So we bring that to our work, and sometimes our clients really want that and they want to do those questionnaires, and sometimes they aren't ready for that yet. But that's always part of how we're thinking. We're always thinking about, well, what motivates you to do the things that you do, and how do we support that? How do we get underneath it to recognize when it's not a healthy motivation, or the motivation isn't being met in a healthy way, shall I say? So that's a big part of the work that we do. And I think the other thing that sets us apart is that we've worked in the coaching space on lots of different levels. So I used to teach coaching. I supervise coaches as well as being a coach myself that has my own coach, my own supervisor. So I'm really embedded in the whole system of coaching. So it's not just I come and do this at you. It's like I'm also having this done to myself. I'm also exploring this world and growing within that. So people then go, oh, okay, so you're not just going to coach me, you're also being coached. So you understand what it's like being on the other side. And I think that really helps leaders to make choices to come and work with us, because they know that what we're doing isn't just coming from a book, it's coming from our lived experience.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. That's definitely a powerful, a powerful message, and I can see how that resonates a lot. Tell me a little bit more about the Enneagram, because it interests me. I've heard about it before, and I could just kind of go away and Google this stuff, but I'd just like to hear from you. Kind of tell me how that fits into the coaching and a little bit more.
So it's like a personality profiling tool on steroids. There are 9 profiles that it recognizes, and so I work with the IEQ 9 system because they have a dynamic questionnaire. So a lot of the time when you do questionnaires for things, it's the same questions regardless of who you are. So sometimes people can kind of work the system to come out a particular way if they want to. But with this one, because it's dynamic, the questions are always shifting and changing. So no two people have the same questionnaire. So it's checking in around, so who are you? How are you showing up? What's really motivating you? What's underneath that, to give you a really clear sense of who you are from a motivational perspective. So there are 9 Enneagram types, but each type has 2 lines. So a space where it's moving towards in terms of its stretch, and a place where it moves towards in terms of its release. And your release is often the space where you find things easier, or where you go when things are challenging for you. And your stretch is the space that you find a little bit harder. So I'm an enthusiastic visionary. I'm a 7, and my release is my 5, which is my quiet specialist. And when I'm in that space, it's where I'm really um, zooming into who am I inside? How do I get quiet? How do I close the doors around me so it's not so noisy and loud? How do I do that piece? And then my stretch is my 1, which is my strict perfectionist, which is all about systems and structures. So my 7 is all about creativity and freedom and ideas and more. And then my 1 is all about systems and structures. So my business partner, he's a 1, systems and structures. I'm a 7. So we have this beautiful overlap between us in the way that we work. So there's this richness that comes into what we do, because he'll say, all right, we need to think about how we do this. And I go, here's 7 ways that we can do this. And he'll be able to go, oh, okay, but here's a really great pathway to use. Let's go down that. And here's the system that we need behind it to make it work. So we complement each other really, really well. So The Enneagram gives you a pathway of how to go beyond where you are right now. It's very much about understanding the self and creating awareness as opposed to defining the self, which some of the other profiling tools will do. They'll go, you are this and that's it.
Mm.
Whereas the Enneagram will go, well, this is what you're motivated for or from. And this is your growth. This is how you manage that. This is how you show up in different ways, recognizing that all 9 points of the Enneagram are open to you at any one point.
Yeah, really interesting. I feel like I want to check that out more and maybe find out what my Enneagram profile is because I do this quite a bit with like I don't know if you've heard of like the Colby Index
Yeah,
and a few
yeah,
others. Yeah, but I'm always mindful of not wanting to identify too much with personality tests and indexes because then you end up like limiting yourself on your potential and capability. So you kind of got to. It's a bit of a nuance, but
yeah.
yeah, that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, I think so. There's lots of crossover. So, on different profiles, I'll kind of show up the same and kind
Mm,
of go, oh, yeah, there's this quality about me that is about creativity, that is about freedom, that is about expanse. And that shows up in most of the ones that I do. But sometimes they'll go, this is who you are. And I've been in organizations where people go, right, so I'm this, and this is how I operate. And you're like, okay, that might be how you operate on a default, but that isn't who you are as a human being. You've got all of these other qualities available to you. How do you lean into that? And the Enneagram really gives you that pathway of how you lean into those other ways of being and recognize that wholeness of what you are.
yeah, interesting. And I do another interesting thing is plugging that into like ChatGPT when you can kind of like build up a profile in a project and then it understands how you work and you give it that kind of context. That's really insightful when you start then evaluating and asking questions of how you work and what motivates you. And yeah, it's really cool. Really like that. What are your thoughts on AI in the coach? Because obviously it's not gonna replace coaches, but there's a lot of there's a lot of maybe the work that is different now. Do you integrate AI? What are your thoughts there?
So I think with any of this stuff it's about embracing it and looking at how do you use it to enable what you do to be done better. So whether it's from a simple note taking, one of the things that is lovely at the moment is you can get AI to do your notes for you. So you can stay more present and more focused with the person that you're working with. And I think that's an amazing way of working. I think that it's great for giving you ideas about how you might run a project or a program. And then you have to come back to the human and go, right, so what am I going to do to run this as opposed to just doing what it says to do, but checking in on what's the nuance for you that enables you to be different. It's really interesting now when you receive emails and it's a the fourth version of that email of the day because somebody's just learns it and they're just going, I want to contact these people to talk about this thing, and they're just emailing you and you're just a number in their system, as it were.
Mm,
And I think there's a danger that people use it in a kind of fast and loose way that removes them and their humanness or their humanity from the communication. So how do we allow ourselves to stay part of it?
mm,
I do also think there's some really interesting uh, explorations with AI in terms of when you've got 4 or 5 ideas for a project and you pump them in and it goes, well, this is what it looks like as an overarching project, or this is the themes that you're pulling through that. So one of the ways that I sometimes use it is somebody says to me, hey, Rob, do you want to come and do a talk somewhere? And I go, yeah, I'd love to. And they go, what would you like to talk about? And I go, give me a day and I'll let you know. And then I'll just, record myself talking at my laptop, thinking about an idea that's fresh in that moment. And then I'll go through and say, right, what are the themes here? what's showing up, what's the crossovers, and then I can go, oh, okay, let me take those themes and then build on those. So I can use it to help me craft something where I'm kind of going, I want to talk about this, but I'm not exactly sure how that relates to that audience group. So recently I did a talk about the hero's journey, but not in terms of our client's hero's journey, but the coach's hero's journey. What's the journey that the coach goes on in that Joseph Campbell framework? And I used chat just to help me think about what that might look like and just give me some ideas that I could then go away, research, develop, and then put into the tool.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense, and you made some key points there, which is yeah, it's how can you enhance how you work as a AI as a co-pilot, but it
Mm,
still requires that the human, you still and the expertise, say like as a coach or a speaker, you still have to know what good looks like, the
yes.
output. You
Yeah.
still have to give it the good inputs, and it's just everything in between enables you to ideate much faster, create things, much more effectively. And yeah, it's very it's an interesting technology, and I love it for those reasons. But yeah, as a I'm a marketer and salesperson, and yeah, but putting marketing campaigns together, you still have to know, what's good. You can't just let it
Yeah.
produce things like you said. You receive those cold outbound emails that are all so generic and the same.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah. And that's quite amusing. It reminds me of when you get somebody's produced a book and everybody's working from that model of the book, and so you get
mm,
the same requests coming your way. And it's like, the models are great, the information is brilliant, but you've got to bring you to it. And that's, I guess, that loops back to the work that Will and I do, is we go, and what's you in this?
mm,
And what's your flavor, your qualities, your skill set that sits in this, that enables this uniqueness to exist? It's similar to the work of Ivy House and Elka Edwards in her book Extraordinary. She talks about, as a leader, there is a unique set of skills that you have that other leaders don't have. So how do you bring that uniqueness to what you do? Often, well, I gotta say, often, sometimes that uniqueness is stripped out, and people just want us to show up and just do it, like a paint by numbers. But what we're exploring is okay. So you might have the framework, but what's the subtle and the nuance that is you, that makes it different, that makes it special, that makes people want to work with you and want to be around you, and how do you enhance that?
mm, yeah, yeah. 100%. That's a really key important point, because that's what you see, in all the bad AI outputs. It's that missing element, which is the uniqueness. Because at the end of the day, it's a pattern recognition,
Mm,
algorithm that creates the same for everybody, unless you have that uniqueness, in your own insights, perspectives, unique story. So yeah, really, really important point.
yeah, yeah.
When it comes to the growth of Zenith, what's the biggest challenge right now? What's not working at the level it could or should?
I think the challenge that we have right now is a beautiful challenge to have, which is time, which is the time to do all the things that are currently showing up, the opportunities that are currently showing up. So how do we fit all of this in? And as we grow, that will become easier because we'll have more people to do the things. But right now, we're gathering those people. We have a small team that we work with, and they're amazing. But at the head of that small team is myself and Will. And so it's like, okay, so it's finding the time to do all the things that we want to do and prioritizing that. So, to start with, we were quite clunky about, well, what goes first and what do we want to do next and how do we do that? And it's taken us a while to find our system, our way of working, through trial and error, to go, oh, this is the way that we work well. It's still a challenge, but we know that if we use this system, these patterns, that we can manage our time in a way that enables us to get the things done. And it's just the volume of those things as you grow. You know, all organizations, when they are in that growth spurt, you bump up against things that you didn't know existed before, and you have to re-navigate those, and then it becomes your comfort zone. You go, oh, we know how to do this, and then you grow again. You go, oh, we're in the strip zone. We don't know what to do here. We're going to have to learn this, research this, find the right people to support us in that. So it's that kind of thing of, we're growing. There is only a certain amount of time. How do we prioritize that time, especially whilst we still both have our own private work that we do? So it's
Mm,
mixing all of these different elements together to create the outputs that we want. So it's really keeping our mind's eye on what's the priority for us, and how do we allow that to be the focus and everything else to fall in behind that. The challenge is sometimes you take your eye off the priority and you have to keep coming back to it. It's a daily exercise of coming back to what's the most important thing. Let's do that. There's, just looking this way, my bookshelves over there, there's the great books like Do the One Thing and Do the Hard Things First and all of that kind of stuff. It's like, stay focused, and that's what we work with our clients on. So there's this kind of nuance of, we're doing it and we're supporting them to do it, and we recognize that it can be challenging, and we recognize that life shows up and other things show up and get in the way. Not in the way, maybe in the way, but other things show up that can take your eye off it. And so, as a Enneagram 7, when new things show up, when shiny things show up, I'm pulled to the shiny, and I
mm,
have to kind of pull myself back and go, oh no, let's finish what we started before we move on to something new. Because if you let me loose without that kind of reflection, then I'm just going to do the new things and
mm,
nothing gets completed. And that's not healthy for an organization or an individual.
mm. Yeah, yeah. No, I resonate a lot with that because it's, yeah, I'm kind of the same with it. It's like magician energy, like entrepreneurial vision, and man, when you get ideas and things come along, you just want to jump all over them, but
Yeah, yeah,
you've got to
yeah.
have those constraints.
And it's how do you jump all over those things and keep the structures of the things going? How do you
Mm,
keep the plate spinning? And at what point do you go, actually, we don't have the capacity for a new plate.
mm,
Let's just leave that plate on the ground, and we won't spin it until we've completed these things. So I also think um, balance around structure is not allowing structure to kill that energy.
for
So how
sure.
do we keep that energy alive and active, and balance it with the structures around us? As a 7, it's one of it's my life's work of, how do I allow this enthusiasm to exist, and this new ideasness to exist, whilst balancing that with completion, and not allowing structures to dull what I do, but to enhance how I do, enhance what I do, like AI. How do I use it to enhance what we do, not dull down or limit what we do?
Mm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, and I'm yeah, I struggle with that balance myself. Absolutely, I totally resonate with that, and it's the maintaining of certain things as well. Like I'm looking for a really good operator in my business right now that can just maintain certain systems
Yeah,
that I know need to still
yeah,
be there because
yeah,
I'm not good at maintaining things. I just want to move on to the new. I
yeah.
feel like I've outgrown something and then moving on to the next phase.
And that's, when I talk about systems, that's kind of part of what I'm talking about, is what do you need to plug into your system to enable things to work well? And that might be a person that goes, I just do this work. This is
Mm,
all I do. So we have somebody in our team who does all that kind of, right, you need a spreadsheet with this information. I'll do that because I know what I want to do. I know how you want it to look and how you want to work with it, but I'm great at creating it. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to make that happen. And it's about going, okay, so what do I need around me that enable me, that free me up to do what I do, but also contain me enough so I don't run away with what I do?
yeah, absolutely. What's the growth goal in the next 12 months or so?
So one of the big things for us is rolling out the team Enneagram. So we went to South Africa and worked with an amazing facilitator, coach, trainer, Renata Landman, and she spent 4 days taking us through how the team Enneagram works, and it just opens up this whole new language, vision, potential when working with teams for them to understand who they are as a team, understand how they operate as a team. Because we often think that, if I'm a 7 and somebody else is a 3 and somebody else is a 1, but we've got two sevens that we're going to operate as a 7 team. That's not necessarily the case. And the system allows us to understand how we're operating as a team, which then will help us to answer some of the frustrations that we have and give us the language to work with that and to work with each other. So this is part of our big growth at the moment, is doing more work with teams to really understand how this works, but so that we can talk more about it and enable teams to really get a sense of who they are as a team so they can work better. So that's our big push at the moment, is how do we do Enneagram teams and work in this way.
Mm,
And what's really interesting is we'll do it in a unique way to others. So we do it as a team as well. So we
mm,
work as a team with teams. So they were able to see or mirror what's going on, and we're able to pull that into the moment when we're working with people. So I work in a real emergent way where I'm going, this is what's showing up. Let's name this right now. Let's look at what we're doing. This is what's showing up here. Let's look at what you're doing. That's showing up there. Right. So how do you navigate that?
mm,
Now that you've become aware of it, what do you shift or change about it? What do you develop? What do you need to let go from it in order to work better as a team? Or what do you need to understand about yourself in order to work better as a team, to plug yourself into that system so it can work in its most optimal way?
mm. Yeah, fascinating. What are going to be some of your main roadblocks, obstacles in the way of rolling that out and the growth over the next 12 months?
Well, I think, one of the things that's really interesting is teams are busy. And when teams are challenged and they need this support, they often don't see that creating the space for it will actually mean they move faster later on. So one of the challenges is getting everybody together. So we're working with a board at the moment, and they're an amazing board, and they do, they are the top of the tree within the work that they do. But because of that, they're all over the globe all the time. So getting them together for a day to sit down and spend this time can feel like a challenge. And it feels like, one hell of a diary dance that you have to do to make that work. And that's part of the challenge. Part of the
Mm,
challenge is when you're working with people who are excellent or have the expertise within their field, they're often out doing the work.
mm,
And so how do you get these teams together to uh, to go through that process and spend time understanding it as a team so they can then go out and do that even better. So that's the challenge, is getting everybody together. I think one of the other things that we'll face is that the Enneagram isn't a widely used and known profiling system in the UK. So often people are going, I kind of hear about it, but I don't quite know about it. We do Myers-Briggs, or we do Strengths, or we do Hogan's. And so people have a known thing that they go to, and we're going, that's great, but here's something else as well that might have a nuance for you that gives you a different way of working or a different insight that's going
mm,
to allow you to work better as a team.
mm. Yeah, that could. Yeah, I can see the challenge. That could work, in like positively though, if you can differentiate, you're kind of new in there, and it's just an easy way of like making it superior to position
Yeah,
against other stuff. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so you mentioned like your time is kind of your biggest constraint and bottleneck, and how you manage that time whilst you grow the company. How do you what does your time look like now? Like what does a week look like? Are do you have those systems and structure in place? Is it different day to day? What's your thoughts there?
One of the big things that we do as a team, as a partnership, myself and Will, is every week we will have a what does your week look like? And
Mm,
we'll do a what's the month ahead look like for us as a business? And where do we need to plug in time together? So every week we will have 3 or 4 connection points for he and I just to sit down for an hour or two to go, what are we working on? What do we need to move forward? How do we do that? We have our system of this is where all the information is held. So any one of us can look at that. And we also choose or sometimes are chosen to lead particular projects. It's like, what are you leading? What do you need from me in relationship to that? My week is always different. So at the end of our conversation this evening, I'm going into town to do a talk at a dinner with some leaders, and then for the following 2 days, I'm doing some associate work where I'll be delivering a leadership program. And then next week, I'm off to Bristol to do some leadership development as well, whilst also doing some a program for Zenith. So there's this kind of mixture of each week looks slightly different. And what I need to be on top of every week is what's the next 2, 3, or 4 weeks looking like, so I can build in what's the planning time or the prep time that I need. When are we moving different things forward? What are the deadlines for all of those different things? It's making sure that I stay on top of that, because all it takes is forgetting to, send out a booking link for a team for
mm,
one-to-one coaching, and then realize that your diary is full and you've got 20 people that you need to work with.
mm.
So it's kind of staying with that. We have a virtual assistant who works with us, who is not a virtual assistant. I don't mean virtual assistant, personal assistant. Is that what I mean?
Yeah, personal assistant, executive assistant.
Yes, that's what I mean. We have an exec assistant that works with us. Don't know why that phrase has lost. I've lost that today, but she works with us, and part of her role is she has access to our diaries.
Mm,
And she'll just be going, hey, I see you've got this. When's this happening for that? And what do you need me to do? And how do we move this forward? And
mm.
okay, so you guys had that meeting. Okay, what's coming out of that needs to. So she's really good at that kind of structured, logical, step by step, and
Yeah.
keeping an eye on that. And then we can go, hey, can you? This was the meeting. This is what the plans were. Can you execute that? Find the right people, put it out to the team, whatever needs to happen. But yeah, keeping and I guess within all of that is um doing the stuff that I need to do for me. So doing my meditation, doing my yoga, going for my walks, staying hydrated, eating healthily, doing all of that stuff that keeps this system working so it can work with all the other systems. Because all it takes is, a couple of days of bad eating, junk food, you get lethargic, and you start to drop things. It's like, how do you keep yourself in optimal shape to do the work that you want to do?
Mm. Yeah. Do you know what's really fascinating? I've done about maybe 30 of these now, 30 of these podcasts, and I kind of pretty much never bring it up, but every founder and my audience is tech founders, or tech enabled founders, coaches, executive coaches, agency owners, so business owners. And yeah, every other podcast someone will talk about meditating or breath work or yoga. So I don't know if
Mm.
I'm attracting this like spiritual energy in or what, but it's funny.
Well, uh,
And
I
I
think
meditate, by the way. That's
so. I think there's two things there. I think that in order to work in a high performance space, we need to look after our own system.
mm,
And we know that one of the things that helps us to reset, to calibrate, is meditation. We know that. So a lot of people will do that, and their meditation will be different. You know, some people will sit cross-legged on a cushion. Some people will go for a walk.
Mm,
Some people, their meditation is washing up. It's that thing that you do that allows your mind, as what is Elka says, allows the tabs in your mind to be closed. So you're not
mm,
operating with a system where you've got a million things running. You just shut them down and
mm,
just do that one activity that allows that to happen, whether that's your meditation, your breath work, your yoga. I also think when we practice these things, we have an energy about us that attracts other people that have that energy about them. And it's not always a conscious attraction. Sometimes it's just an unconscious. Oh, actually, oh, you do a bit of that. Oh, you do a bit of that too. Oh, you do that. Oh, okay, cool. Oh, I didn't know you did that. You know, I'll work with people, and then one day I'll talk about, you know, maybe my oracle cards or my crystals, and they'll go, oh, wait, you do that. Oh, I do
mm,
a bit of that in my spare time. I go, oh yeah, I do a bit of that, and then all of a sudden you're into this new conversation. I think there's a lot of that work. Perhaps we might want to think of it as holisticness happening in the world that we don't always speak about or we don't
mm,
always identify within people. But in these sorts of conversations, it starts to bubble up into
mm.
the space.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's been a really interesting exercise, yeah, doing this podcast because I usually won't mention it in my, business professional life that, the yoga and the meditation, like any sort of spiritual paradigm and world that I navigate from internally. But because of this podcast, I think it's just kind of, yeah, people talk more personally. And I truly think now, the more authentic I am in my conversation, the more I speak my truth, the more I just attract that in. And yeah, it opens up these crazy conversations that I have with, founders on a podcast that's it wasn't my intention, it's funny.
This one of the things that's really fascinating around that, and some of the work that Will and I do in this space is recognizing that sometimes the thing that you set out to do is just a mechanism for something else to emerge.
Mm,
You who knows, in a year's time, your podcast may be a purely spiritual
mm,
leadership space,
mm,
um, when that wasn't necessarily what you set out to do. I think things evolve and unfold in interesting ways, and part of our work is to pay attention to that, to notice that, and then make the choice about, do we want to go further into that or not? And sometimes it's about, that's just the stuff you do at home. At home, that's just your hobby. That's just your, your side hustle. Don't know why I did that, but that's just the thing, something else that you do. So one of the things that I do is I'm a Reiki practitioner, but it's just something that I do. So I go to classes, I learn about it, I hang out with people and we talk about it. It's not part of any business that I do. I don't go out and do Reiki. It's just something that I'm really kind of fascinated and curious about. And so do that. And then every now and again, I'll be talking to a lead and they go, oh, yeah, I did a Reiki training course. And then
mm,
we'll have a different type of conversation. And one of the things you said there is, when we're authentic to our truth and we speak our truth, things start to shift and change. And I think that's one of the pure essences of coaching, is enabling people to speak their truth that enables that growth and change to exist.
yeah. No, 100% agree with that. And I just find, because my whole podcast is around growth, right? But it's the inner growth feeds the outer growth. I do
Yeah.
genuinely believe your outer world follows your inner world. Um, so yeah, it's business growth, but yeah, it all ends up in conversations about internal growth too.
Because that Michael Neal's work, the Inside Out Revolution, that's really fascinating as well, about what is the internal shifts that you need. Catching my language here. What are the internal shifts that you might choose to take that will have an external ripple for you?
Mm,
How do you work on the inside first to create the outside, recognizing that our experience of the world is an internal experience?
Mm.
of the world, which then leads into the work of Sydney Banks and three principles. And so there's this whole range of information out there and ways of working that talks about what's the shift here internally to create the external. And that's coaching as well, because coaching, we often go, what's the goal? And then we go, so what do you need to become in order to
Mm.
achieve that?
Yeah,
If
absolutely.
so what's that internal shift that needs to take place? And that
Yeah.
might be about mindset, that the changes, or an awareness that becomes part of that change.
100%. And it's yeah, I think that's a really important point that you made as well. It's we have this vision, this goal, and if that's an authentic thing inside you, I genuinely believe we all have this soul path, that this is our growth path, and we veer off track all the time because we just get in our own way. But
Yeah,
what is our authentic, higher self and true potential? And that's the vision, the goal, and then everything that's not in alignment with that internally appears as we grow to
yeah,
achieve that thing.
yeah,
And it's really everything just attracts in when we just get rid of, the fears, the underlying limiting beliefs, and
yeah,
that's the true growth, I believe.
yeah, yeah. And what's beautiful about that is it's a never-ending. I mean,
Mm,
it's both the beauty and the curse, because it's a never-ending
yeah.
journey. It's like the onion. It's like we peel down, we go, oh, and there's still something there, and then we go a layer deep, and go, oh, there's still something there. There's a fear that I thought I dealt with, but it's just kind of snuck around, and now it's showing up like this, or a new situation throws up an old way of being, an old pattern that I need to deal with. And that, that authenticity, that alignment, if you're in the energy world, you might talk about that as the frequency that you're vibrating at. It's like getting all of that. I was going to say getting all of it right. I don't mean right. I think what I mean is moving towards all of that creates the growth and the opportunities. So I
Mm,
don't think there is we get it right. I think we're always moving closer towards something. And when we veer off it, when we make a decision not based on our values, when we make a decision not based on our inner goals or inner feelings, that decision doesn't feel right and often doesn't turn out the right way for us. But when we're making things using our inner compass, even when they don't turn out well in the external world, we still feel good about the decisions and the choices that we make.
mm, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, well, I really appreciate this conversation, Robert. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast. Where can people find out more about you online?
Ah, so I'm all over LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Robert Stephenson. You can also find us at zenithleadership.com online. So we've got our website there. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram as well as Creative Robert. So I'm in those spaces.
Awesome. I'll put the links in the description as well, when
Cheers.
we publish this. Thanks again, Robert. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I'll be watching your growth and the growth of Zenith with great interest.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right.